educational sector will contribute to the development of our human capital, while the loans for the agricultural sector will help the move to diversify the economy.
2 persons have been confirmed dead, while 2 others are responding to Lassa fever treatment at the Southeast Virology Center in Ebonyi State. The state government has shut down the missionary hospital where the outbreak emanated from to checkmate further spread of the disease.
Under control. Immediately the case was reported, our governor in his usual manner ordered for immediate proactive action, and that was why he said we will close down activities at Service Hospital so that we completely decontaminate the hospital.
And now President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the appointment of Ahmad Salihijo Ahmed as the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Rural Electrification Agency. Ahmed Salihijo, a renewable energy expert, holds 2 master's degrees in development studies and project planning and has acquired vast knowledge and experience in power sector development. Also appointed Olani Alaba Netufo. Just few hours after the run-up of presidential elections in Guinea, ECOWAS Election Observer Mission has declared that the conduct was generally peaceful.
Observation mission urges the 2 candidates in particular, as well as their political parties and supporters, to accept the verdict of the ballot boxes and encourages them to graciously accept the will of the people and in the event of complaints to resort exclusively to legal means to request reparation. The mission also invites ECOWAS and the international community to accept the elected candidates and members of government to ensure continuous engagement with political actors through dialogue and mediation for peace building in Guinea.
Nigerians have been urged to take a cue from the life of President Muhammadu Buhari, irrespective of their religious, political and ethnic affiliations. This was emphasized during the presentation of a book titled Integrity versus Power Play, Understanding the Buhari Phenomenon, authored by Philip Abese. The Integrity versus Power Play is a literary document that garners the experience and attributes of President Buhari to highlight fresh perspectives into the issues surrounding the existence of credible leadership. The 268-page book goes beyond biography to address sensitive historical and current political discourse to connect major and minor events in the life of President with how Nigeria has been transformed since the advent of the current administration. The author highlights the resounding victory of President Muhammadu Buhari in the 2019 general elections and why he remained an exceptional leader in the military and political arena in Nigeria.
For mankind is understanding and knowing the reality of the moment. And I think today the phenomenon of President Muhammadu Buhari has brought about reality on us.
And that's the news. Good Morning Nigeria returns immediately after the break. Stay with us.
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. Igniting smiles across Africa and beyond. As Goge Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in the quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnerships with the largest TV network in Africa, the NTA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Studio 24, Delta Airline, Toll Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogeafrica.tv. Goge Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage, travel and tourism.
Ha! Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down.
Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad, or even end up in prison.
My name is Balaunti. I'm the Managing Director of Petroleum Product Marketing Company, a subsidiary of NNPC. There are significant price discrepancy between Nigeria and its neighbors across Africa. There's a discrepancy of between 150 to 250 naira. That creates an incentive for arbitrage, whereby smuggling triumphed by taking petroleum products across the neighbors so that they can be sold at higher price. While the smugglers are making the money, Nigeria is paying for it. And that payment is distorting everything that we do in terms of planning, in terms of our ability to fund, and thereby taking money that is meant for development. The introduction of this Operation White will have a reduction of close to 6 million liters on a daily basis, which if you take an average of 150, translates to a saving of over 1 billion naira every day. That is the benefit of Operation White, and we have started seeing the great benefit.
What we are really cultivating here is a better future for all Nigerian women, and it's not always easy. Panadol Extra relieves headache, backache, joint pain, toothache, and menstrual pain. The pain is worth it.
If you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria, and we're broadcasting live in Abuja. As the countdown to 2020 continues, Nigerians are still reacting to the decision by the Central Bank of Nigeria to slash various bank charges from January. Abdul Karim Zumwe has this and more on business news.
The new guidelines issued to banks consist mainly of downward review of bank charges and fees set to take effect from January 1st, 2020. This has elucidated various reactions from operators of financial institutions as well as banking customers as Nigeria targets an increase in financial inclusion. A cross-section of customers who spoke to NTA Business News say this will alleviate the pressures experienced in financial transactions and other aspects of their lives.
My opinion is a welcome decision because it will help the masses. The masses are paying very expensive for withdrawal. If they slash the price down, then the masses will enjoy the benefit of the federal government. And that is the essence of the CBN slashing the price.
It's going to be a very good, positive result to average Nigeria.
In another development, CFA name has been changed to ECO, supposedly, as the ECOWAS single currency. A release by the Special Advisor Media and Communication to the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Yunus Otanko Abdullahi, says Nigeria recently received news of the name change of UEMAO currency and is currently studying the situation and would respond in due course. Now let's head to the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and find out how the market fared on 30th of December 2019. With business news, Abdul Karim Zermi.
All right, many thanks to you, Abdul Karim Zumi, for the business package. Coming up next on Good Morning Nigeria is the newspaper review. Stay with us.
And the newspaper reviewer, Bayo Chiobi, is in the studio. Compliments of the season, Bayo.
Same to you.
It's good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you.
See you. So we'll begin with the leadership newspaper this morning. Just below the masthead, Nigeria to decide next line of action on ECOWAS single currency. That's coming from the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Electricity workers threaten to resume strike. You find that on page 9. And the bold headlines there, 2019, federal government leads achievements, says economy recorded 2.2% growth. That story is on page 4, which Rider declares 2 trillion non-oil export earnings. Insists Nigeria hasn't reached 25% of debt ceiling. Analysts forecast improved economy in 2020. And insecurity, federal government to withdraw military from internal operations. And the picture story there, President Muhammadu Buhari welcoming Pastor Tunde Bakari to the presidential villa, Abuja, yesterday. At the bottom plate of the leadership newspaper, Sokoto lawmaker dies during plenary. That story is on page 8. Pressure mounts on PDP National Working Committee over Elumelu orders. That story is on page 12. New Year, customers besiege ATMs as bank close early today. You find that story on page 45. We have no hand in 37 billion National Assembly renovation budget. That's coming from the Senate. That story is on page 2. Claire?
All right, let's take a look at the Daily Trust now. And Daily Trust is leading with a story on the front page. It says military set to withdraw from volatile areas, and it comes with a rider, Nigeria not at war, and that's from the naval chief. That's the lead story, and there's a beautiful graphic representation of that story. The camera can just tilt down a bit. You look at the map of Nigeria there, detailing some of at the bottom there you read communal clashes and banditry, over the last decades, the political crisis over indigenous rights and all that, and then some crises across Nigeria where the military are currently operating. That's what that map represents, and the different crises at the different parts of the country right there. And just at the extreme right there, you find combined strength of military personnel. If the camera can zoom in a bit, you'll find the 150,000 combined strength of military personnel in Nigeria, and manpower of the police force in Nigeria is 400,000. 400,000. You see the two graphic details right there, and that's the lead story for the Daily Trust. It has other stories again, just at the bottom of the paper. Police sergeant dismissed, charged with murder. You can read that up on page 26. And there's another one. These are all economic stories, but we'll get to that once by your reviews. By which of these stories are you picking?
But there are two of them that are very critical. One is the federal government's kind of review of its performance in 2019.
Yes, that's profile.
Which the Honorable Minister for Information, Lai Mohammed, presented. And from all the data that was available, it shows that the economy had grown by about 2.2%, while the non-oil sector accumulated as high as 2 trillion naira. And this is the highest ever, according to the information given by the Honorable Minister. The oil sector growth was also placed at 4%, while non-oil sector is growing steadily up to 2%. You know, there is a deliberate diversification from oil to other sectors, especially agriculture and mining. And the oil production, the highest we have had this year was 2 million barrels per day. And the major growth drivers identified by the Honorable Minister were information and communication, transportation, agriculture, and mining. In the area of debt rate, the Minister said Nigeria's debt is now about 18.99%. There are concerns being expressed about Nigeria's debt, and the Minister says that it is still safe because it is far from the debt ceiling of 25%. However, there are concerns about debt services to revenue ratio, which according to the minister, is still very high. And to tackle that, there has been concerted efforts towards revenue drive in widening the tax base so as to provide that as a solution.
Well, sorry, Bayo, when you mentioned 18.99%, that is our debt to GDP rate.
Yes, currently.
Yes, debt to GDP rate.
Yes, debt to GDP rate.
Yes.
And the minister also emphasized that we are still safe from the ceiling of 25% debt to GDP rate. So there are concerns about debt, but the minister emphasized that efforts are being made to make sure that that is managed critically.
And there's specific, sorry again, there's specific because the Daily Trust has that story quite all right on its front page there, and it's captioned, FG puts debt profile at $84 billion, says though servicing too high. And this is a combined figure, so we don't get
for federal and states.
Precisely, yes. and right on the inside page, it's specified for local debt profile as well as a national debt profile, all put together, amounts to $84 billion. Yes. Those servicing, he says, is high, but of course we are within the benchmark of 25%.
Yes.
25%.
Right. The other area is he provided a clarification also that the exercise was put in place is exercise Swift Reserve, and it is yielding results. Others have identified it as border closure, and he says that it has
border drill.
Yes,
that's what it calls.
Exercise Swift Response, which is they call it simple terms border drill. And he said the intention was to take care of challenges to the economy and also security, especially when the borders, because they were porous, were avenues for infiltration of illegal arms, which were enhancing the capacity of the terrorists, banditry, and criminality.
We can't deny the fruit of that exercise, can we?
Yes. In fact, he identified some of them.
Yes.
He said before now, 34 rice mills are now productive. Before now, they were idle. And so much so that Nigeria has now reached almost self-sufficiency in rice production.
And
there's another story, if you're done with that economy, there's another story on the front page of the Daily Trust. We're speaking on economic matters now. High bills stifle 5 million power users as FG's 27 billion meter project hangs.
Yeah, you see, the challenge with bills have been that estimated billing, and there have been deliberate demand by consumers for prepaid meter. That will go a long way to, but the provision of prepaid meter has become a burden for the companies, and therefore they came up with a strategy whereby you could pay for a meter and get it. But when you pay,
that is itself, it's not even as effective as anticipated.
Service the meters?
Yes, pay and get.
Yes.
Pay and get.
Some
but
people
you
pay, but
Nigeria critically, there are always middlemen who come in between to constitute an obstacle.
Yeah.
For instance, in the Ibadan Distribution Electricity Company, in parts of Kwara State, you cannot go and pay for a meter. You want a meter, you have to go and pay a middleman who is an electricity contractor who is said to be registered with the Ministry of Works and Housing, and you have to pay another 10,000 before you get the meter. And unless the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Agency eliminates all these middlemen who are becoming an obstacle, the intention of getting prepaid meter to consumers will always be frustrated. So that is what is. The intention is very good, because if they bring the meter to you freely, there are ways of varying the rate, the tariff you pay, so that it accommodates the free meter. If you also pay for it, they vary the tariff you pay so that it accommodates what you have paid. So it's a very simple. I had the experience, and I found out that it is very beneficial to have prepaid meter than to wait for estimated bill, because the estimated bill is very arbitrary.
Yes, it is.
So those are the challenges.
And we see electricity
meters
workers
are in short supply. Consumers are on the increase, and they want meters.
Bayo, the question will be, why are they in short supply? We have local places here in the country where meters are manufactured.
Metered manufacturing company is there in Zaria.
Exactly. So what's happening? What's happening? A lot of Nigerians would want to have their meters because, like you said, it's the best way to go. It's just like having your mobile phone and recharging your mobile phone as at when you wish.
And you can control it.
So you control your consumption.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So I don't know. You know, someone came back yesterday. I met someone yesterday who, you know, had went on a particular training outside the country, and he came back and said, "Claire, do you know that what we've got all the laws that we need that are in operation out there? Just what we have here. Our challenge here is implementation. I mean, you took it out of my mouth.
Implementation.
You know.
And I see electricity workers striving to resume strike.
Yes. There again, there are several other challenges. Some of them are saying that they still owe them some of their entitlement that have not been paid. Some of them say that some of them are on half paid. Others are saying that the new electricity companies are denying them the opportunity of unionizing, and therefore they are not able to demand some of their entitlements. But the Nigeria Electricity Regulation Commission will sort it out with the DISCOs, the TRANSCOs, and the GENCOs. But meanwhile, the other story of interest is that the personnel of the military are to withdraw for internal security. And before they do that, they ensure that all places are safe, and they will allow the police, supported by the Civil Defense Corps, to take over civil internal security challenges.
Will they be armed?
Well, the police normally are the instrument for internal security.
Yes.
It is when the challenges overwhelm them that the president and commander-in-chief can authorize the armed forces to come in support of them. This is provided for in the Constitution, Chapter 218, Section 218, I think. But already, governors are crying. If you look at Punch, you have reports about that. The governors of Benue is crying.
Adamawa, Taraba, and Zamfara.
They are all saying that it is too premature to withdraw soldiers from. In fact, the governor of Adamawa said, Ahmed Fintri, is saying that, in fact, more troops need to be deployed to the northeast.
Yes.
All right, Bayo. There's another story, probably. This one is from Dangote. It says it's on the Daily Trust as well. My company's lost 25 billion naira to Apapa Port's road gridlock.
Yes.
This Apapa is becoming intractable.
A port is an avenue, one of the nucleus for any nation's economy. And therefore, when goods and services that are supposed to run the economy get stuck in a gridlock, certainly it will affect the economy. And a prominent investor like that is already giving an indication of that. And this is why I think the federal government needs to be commended for extending the standard gauge train services to the port. You know, already there is the services from Lagos to Ibadan. They are working on the end to extend it from that Lagos end, I think Iju, to the port. It will go a long way in decongesting the gridlock at the port. We all recall that there was even a presidential task force headed by the vice president to ensure that that port is decongested. But it's like an octopus. You cut away one of the feathers, another one is growing elsewhere there. The other area to look at is the issue of 37 billion for National Assembly refurbishing. Two non-governmental organizations, Social Economic Right Agenda and Budget Enough is Enough, as well as 583 concerned Nigerians, have gone to an FCT Federal High Court to ask the president, the court to stop the president and Minister of Finance for giving approval and releasing the 37 billion, because they believe that from their own contention in court that critical sectors in the nation, education, health, clean water, roads and infrastructure will suffer if such quantum of amount is provided for renovation of the National Assembly. You recall that the National Assembly was built with an amount of about $7 million, 1990.
Was it dollars? I learned it was $7
million, yes, from 1996 to 1999. Now, what has been approved now, 37 billion, if you go by the current exchange rate, is about $100 million, which is 14. If you had used that amount, you could have had 14 National Assembly. You are going to use that quantum to renovate one complex. And that is why there's a lot of concern about that.
Okay, let's go to the editorial.
Okay, let's quickly take a look at the editorial, which is taken from the Blueprint. Again, it's raising issues around the Constitution and the autonomy of states' legislature. If you recall, there was a time, according to this editorial, that President Muhammadu Buhari, of course, linked the delay in granting full autonomy to state legislatures, of course, with the Nigerian Constitution. And flowing from that, there was a committee which was, enunciated, a Presidential Implementation Committee on Autonomy of State Legislature and State Judiciary, and that was in accordance with 4th alteration to the 1999 Constitution. Now, this editorial basically is bringing out the facts, that the legislative arm of government is the distinctive element between, I'm reading from here now, between democracy and authoritarianism, and must therefore be allowed to function devoid of the intermeddling of the executive arm for democracy to flourish. So it's all about democracy to flourish and have value here.
Yes, it is about the autonomy of the state legislature to function as another arm of government. But where you have the executive arm interfering and not allowing it to function, the editorial is saying we are operating an authoritarianism rather than a democracy. But critically, if you look back, we were in the military regime. The only distinction between that and that is the legislature that was absent then, and therefore it is very critical. But this present administration has had emphasis on having this issue of autonomy by the tiers of government. In fact, even with the local government, you recall the account with the local government and the measure that was taken to ensure that it is not under the tie and losing of the state government. So if we go a long way to ensure that the three tiers of government, local government and state government, can function democratically to enhance development in our nation.
All right, Bayo, I guess that will be all for today's review. We've given you enough time. No red flags, no yellow flags.
I was alarmed when I saw you with a touch of yellow today.
Okay, next time I'm going to wave it for you. Yeah. We'll see you tomorrow, Bayo.
Right. See you next year.
Oh yes, tomorrow is 2020. See you 2020.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
See you this.
All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria. If you've just joined us, thank you for tuning in. And right on time, too, for us to start our conversation. And today, we're going to look at the scorecards, so to speak, of 2019. We're going to review some of the very major sectoral progress so far made in the outgoing year. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
They swore an oath to serve our fatherland and defend the people. They traded their freedom, comfortable homes, and mortgaged their lives on the battleground for our unity and peaceful living. These are the great, fearless, loyal, and committed Nigerian armed forces who risked their lives courageously to safeguard our borders. But in the line of duty, many never returned. Nigerians, arise, let's celebrate our fallen heroes. Put on the remembrance emblem with pride to support the incapacitated and families of our fallen heroes.
It is indeed befitting to honor the memory of the gallant martyrs and men who paid the supreme sacrifice to keep the country united.
President Muhammadu Buhari enjoins all ministries, parastatals, religious and corporate bodies to donate generously to the Emblem Appeal Launch. Send your donations to these accounts. Account name, Emblem Appeal Launch. Account number 393-200-7526. EcoBank Nigeria PLC.
Nigeria is our country, and it's the only country we have. Irrespective of religion, tribe, the heroes of our past did their best to take Nigeria to where it is today. It would be unfortunate, I repeat, unfortunate, absolutely, if we don't keep Nigeria intact. We must put our differences behind. We must let everybody know that human beings cannot live together without some differences. But at the end of the day, our country is Nigerian. It must always come first.
Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
We have come to the end of another successful year, and we wish to appreciate all those that mean so much to us, our sponsors, our clients, government at all levels, corporate bodies, advertisers, religious bodies, civil society groups, political parties, and above all, you, our esteemed viewer. Together, we made 2019 great. Together, we shall make 2020 even greater. That is why we say, thank you. This is wishing you Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
What we are really cultivating here is a better future for all Nigerian women, and it's not always easy. Panadol Extra relieves headache, backache, joint pain, toothache, and menstrual pain. The pain is worth it.
Thanks for rejoining us, and to kickstart our conversation on the review of 2019, let's take this scorecard put together by Anthony Forson.
We have called this press conference to enable us.
In what turned out to be a federal government scorecard for the year ending 2019, the Information and Culture Minister, Lai Mohammed, brought to the fore major achievements of the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration in the year under review, starting by laying the cards on the table with regards to certain concerns about the country's debt profile, which he said is a cumulative borrowing by successive administrations over many years. Therefore, with the quest to provide infrastructure, borrowing, he said, has become inevitable.
In the face of massive infrastructural decay, no responsible government will sit by and do nothing. This administration's borrowing, therefore, is aimed at revamping our infrastructural deficit, including roads, bridges, railways, waterways, and power, to help unleash the potential of the nation's economy. The loans for the educational sector will contribute to the development of our human capital, while the loans for the agricultural sector will help the move to diversify the economy.
On the economy, Lai Mohammed said 2019 saw an improvement as the economy grew at an average of 2.2% by the third quarter of 2019, compared to 1.7% over same period in 2018. The oil and non-oil sectors performed creditably in 2019, growing at an average of 4% compared to 2.4% in 2018. Oil production experienced an average daily rise in 3 years, recording a 2 million barrels per day production. There was a steady trend on inflation as year-on-year headline declined from 15.1% in 2018 to 11.9% by November 2019. Core inflation on its part slowed from 12.1% to 9% between January 2018 and November 2019.
Year-on-year food inflation rate decreased from 18.9% in January 2018 to 14.5% in November 2019.
Foreign trade performance in the external sector suggests an increase in diversification of exports.
Key exports of note. While the value of crude oil exports decreased by 3.78%, non-crude exports rose by over 30% in value between 2018 and 2019. Non-oil exports also doubled from about 1 trillion naira to 2 trillion naira over this period.
On fiscal performance, revenue shortfalls were recorded, but prioritization of expenditure led to a high performance. Breaking down the total aggregate revenue position put at 2 trillion naira or 58% of pro rata target, the minister explained that all revenue hit 49% performance. Company income tax stood at 349 billion naira, value added tax 81 billion naira, and customs collection 184 billion naira. Capital importation, as it concerns direct foreign investment, got close to $20 billion, which is 34% higher than $15 billion recorded in third quarter of 2018. Apart from banking and shares, the minister said major sectors that witness high volume of capital inflow in the year under review are telecommunications, production, and services.
Thanks, Tony. And joining us in the studio to review 2019 activities in some sectors of the economy is Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, researcher and public affairs analyst. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Compliments of the season. Yeah. Also with us in the studio is Dr. Emeka Okengo, development economist and former World Bank consultant. Good to have you join us
Pleasure
on the last edition of the Good Morning Nigeria.
Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Claire?
Yes, okay. We also like to introduce Professor Akim Ayorinde, Head of Department, Crop Protection, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Abuja. Prof, good to have you with us.
Thank you, man.
All right.
Good morning, Nigerians.
We're glad to have you on this last edition in this year, in this decade.
In this decade, yes. As we step into the next decade.
To God be the glory.
Yes, to God be the glory. Yes, we'll begin with Dr. Abu Hamisu. I would like you to give us an assessment of the political climate in the outgoing year. We've had, elections, politics was all over 2019. Court cases, legal tussles and all that. Let's have just a little bit of a preview of what happened, what went down in 2019 politically, in the political sphere.
Well, in all honesty, I would say that two things happened. And it has to do with what happened in 2015, which is that most of the gains recorded in 2015 is gradually being eroded, with all honesty, with all sincerity of purpose. Because by 2015, after the elections, as a result of the use of the card readers, a lot of politicians refused to go to court because they knew that they lost the elections hands down. But after the debacle, what I would choose to call debacle in Rivers State, the election of Governor Wike that went up to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court passed a judgment that the card reader was not known to law. At that instance, politicians resorted to use of violence to rig election again, because the operational formula the politicians have been using is this, that it is better for you to rig and be taken to court than going to court yourself. So they use maximum violence to rig election, because in our courts, we don't have court of justice in Nigeria, we only have court of law. So it is from the point of the law. And they ask you, can you prove that the rigging has substantially affected the outcome of the election? And you cannot prove it because of the kind of system we are operating. So you have so many polling units, so many voting points, to the extent that you do not have the capacity to collate evidences that you could produce in the court of law to say that this election has been marred with irregularity. So the judgment is always that though there are irregularities, but it is not substantial enough to invalidate the outcome of the election. So elections and election victories are no longer coming from the ballot boxes. They are now emanating from the court. So which means we are going back to the era of litigation. So by 2015, if you compare the litigations in 2015 as well as the litigations in 2019, especially Kogi elections and other places, even the presidential election, you could see that there is this kind of return of violence. But if you ask me, Nigerians have come to respect democracy and they want to practice democracy. And some of the people want to conduct themselves in a way that shows that democracy is all about canvassing opinion and then reaching consensus without having to injure each other. So the essence of democracy is for us to be able to have a conversation, to make choices without anybody coercing you, without anybody unleashing violence. The second thing that has emerged is the failure of the Nigerian police force to really provide the atmosphere needed for people to conduct their vote. Prior to the two elections, I think we're here in this studio doing the analysis as well as the other studio about the projections and the security arrangement and everything. And it failed because the maximum violence that we've seen, despite the deployment of the numbers of police force that went to those states, leaves much to be desired. Because if you are deploying, say, 30,000 police force to Kogi State alone, I expect that there should be some place of calm during the election. But when you have talks still coming to snatch or to disrupt voting, then it means we're in a state of war, not an election again. Now, lastly,
the naval chief just said that we're not in a state of war. Just to say that.
Yes, but you know, when we're in a state of war, when non-state actors, when non-state actors are beginning to use the weapon of the armed forces.
But are the security, the police, are they well equipped?
You see, you cannot deploy 30,000 police to Kogi State and you tell me the police is not well equipped. If we are talking about elections across the country, we could say that they are understaffed or that they do not have the required numbers. But when we're talking about staggered election that has to do with just a state, and you are deploying like 30,000, you can't tell me that the whole armory of the police, you are deploying 30,000, you telling me they don't have all the equipment, the rifles and everything, the tank that they can deploy, and that some few individuals with unmarked vehicles will just come and go and disrupt the process and they go scot-free. After shutting down the state, you will not allow movement in and out of the state. So where are they coming from and where do they go to? Except if there is no will. You know, when people talk about political will, it amuses me because the will we put into doing the wrong things are the same will we're supposed to deploy to do the right things.
Right,
now, lastly, I wanted to say something. I know that every election there is always a post-mortem. I'm not sure if the judiciary usually undertake post-mortem of the political judgment they usually give in this country. You have the same court giving different interpretation of the same case. And the other thing again is the performance of INEC during the election. You find pre-election judgment dovetailing into the election. Even at the eve of the election, a day to the election, they are still giving judgment that a certain candidate must be on the ballot. So within 24 hours, how can INEC now print the ballot and then distribute them to the Senate? So, but in terms of the political atmosphere, I think the entire thing is stabilizing.
On a scale of 1 to 10?
On the scale of 1 to 10, honestly, we are back to 6.
All right, Dr. Abu, thank you. Just to clarify that we have 3 guests here representing 3 specific, sectors. Okay. So we'll just try and touch, the different sectors, but we'll go around with each question and, of course, have your different views. Dr. Abu, we've kicked off with the political system, and you've raised points, 3 points, which I would like Dr. Kungwu to also respond to. He has talked about the attitude of our political actors, within the political system in 2019, which he said has not been, from his assessment, has not been progressive. He's also looked at the institutions, democratic institutions, and the role they have played within this political, system, 2019. He has mentioned the role of the police and INEC, and he has also looked at the quality of justice dispensation with regards to election petition matters. What, in your view, how do you evaluate the attitude or sentiments of our political actors within this outgoing year?
Well, in one word, I think what Dr. Abu has said is just one word: access to justice and our justice system. And when you're talking about justice, you're talking about 2 very important components, okay? What you call your security services and then what you call your judicial system. Those are the 2 things. The moment you get them right, then you can actually now have what you call the rule of law. That's what I think Dr. Abu has tried to say. And if you remember very clearly, one of the few things that President Buhari had said early is that either we kill corruption or corruption will destroy us. So what is he also saying? He's talking about the corrupt system. And then when people use the word corruption, it does not connect stealing of public funds alone. Okay, there's nepotism, there's favoritism, there is a wrong application, there's technicalities. All these things is like having a flash that is corrupt. A lot of things can corrupt a system. Okay, water pouring into your computer can corrupt it, viruses can corrupt it. So he is just talking about a system that needs to be honed. For me, I think the focus should be on these two very important elements, which is one, our security service that first and foremost begin to develop what you call your prima facie cases, and then the justice system, okay, which he now also now says can now be skewed. And he used one word that is quite interesting, okay, justice and law. Yeah. Okay, until we're able to make our justice systems what you call temple of justice, okay, and not, courts of law, you might not be able to actually now have, this synergy that can be able to, bring development.
If I may just chip in, other people or some people would argue that, okay, the issues that Dr. Abu, raised are mere isolated cases, because he mentioned the case of Rivers and Kogi. These are just isolated cases compared to the value that has been added in terms of okay, justice dispensation. We've seen quite a number of upturns, of election petitions, people who won elections and went to the court and were upturned. So against that background, there's something
the president said on his birthday, and it's very instructive. He said that by the time he's leaving government, he's going to make certain, okay, that he leaves a system where there'll be a lot of political correctness. I'm just paraphrasing, okay? And Dr. Abu also said something, for you to go and get justice, there are a lot of demands. Let's look at the last case. Part of why the opposition didn't have a very strong case was that they said, you cannot use, 2 or 3 or 4 states to be able to now let it represent what has happened in 120,000 polling units. And then a lot of these cases are also time-bound. You don't even also have the time to be able to even present your case if you had them. But I think, for me, I've learned as I get older to begin to look at things from different perspectives. As a much more younger person, I would have been more aggressive. I would have also taken his position to say, oh, no. But I begin to look at things from a much more deeper perspective. And this is where I come in as a development person, okay? At the surface, it looks as if, we're not moving. But take it or leave it, I think we're progressing. And if you understand the fact that development is a very slow and tortuous process, every lesson brings us to the next bridge. And can I tell you what's happening now? Nigerians have become so conscious and cautious and involved in development that as it's happening, people are on it. I can give you 2 clear cases. Maybe a little bit of a digression. There's this woman that was trending on social media that was banging her house girl on the ground or something. In 24 hours,
they call her the slammer.
Oh, beauty! In 24 hours, you saw her in the office of the police commissioner, arrested. Now, there's this other young girl who they said the boyfriend or something murdered. In less than 24 hours. And do you know how this happened? Because Nigerians are getting more involved in our development process. So sometimes anger can actually lead to process. Mistakes can actually lead to development. That's what I'm trying to say. We are not going to get it all right in a day. Okay? It will never happen. We must be able to take it to the next level. I can assure you, he talked about the 2015 elections where we used the card reader. Yes, there were, if you also calculate what happened in the 2000 elections, they were not much more different, okay, for what has happened in every other election in this country. And I'll tell you why. The beginning point is the recruitment process. The moment you do not recruit the right people, the moment you do not stop the wrong people from early on of entering into that race, it begins to become a race of who now gets there first. So I think the greatest challenge we have is that we've not been able to introduce a system that weeds out those that have no business to be in our political space, okay, vis-a-vis character, vis-a-vis background, okay? It's not every Nigerian that should run for office.
We'll have to hold you, we'll have to put you on hold so that Jume will just bring in...
Yes, just like you said, there's no nation that can go forward without having a solid political base. Mr. Oyorinde, let's come to you now and have Oyorinde. Let's come to you now and have your opening comment on what we've been talking. You've heard from him, you've heard from Hamisu. Let's have your opening, Slavo. Then we'll go in depth into our discussion.
Basically, what the two doctors have spoken about, you need political stability for growth. We should realize that. So, and what is happening within the phase of politics now is not new. Because doctor is older than us. And if we track down back to history, we've had the issue of wet here around 1960-something, Operation Wet here, around 83 election. We have similar things that happen. But the only thing that as he has claimed that there is growth is that it's minimal. It's not as terrible as it was then. But the only thing is that what is perfect is change. There will always be a change when you learn from experience. What we should know is that the Nigerian politics is winner takes all. That's the way we are playing our politics.
Zero-sum game.
And that is the main problem that we are having with the election now. Because you know that if I really find my way to win, I have the resources to fight my enemy. So if that is what is available, you go at using all available means to win your election. The two cases that came up, you know, something came up in Bayelsa that nobody expected.
Yes.
Nobody gave APC opportunity in Bayelsa that it can never happen. To someone like me, I don't even believe it's possible for APC to win in any state in the south, within that southeast and south-south. But people can be fed up. That's the issue of awareness now. People are getting aware of the need for you to have a good leader. The election in Bayelsa and Kogi went simultaneously. The report that we are having from both ends, there's no way you lose your hold and there will be no quarrel. The only thing is our security and the justice should be what the politician can rely on. If politician knows that if I lose this election by crook, by the other method, I have hope in judiciary, the violence will be reduced. But when you know that there's no hope at the end of the tunnel, you will, okay, you are buying gun, I will buy a gun. You have the resources, you want violence, we will do violence. Because before that election, I told one of my friends, I said, look, the issue of Kogi State, who wins the election, is the one that knows how to fight and knows how to mobilize well. Because one thing about Nigeria, a typical Nigerian politician doesn't even think about his followers. What they think is to hijack and get the position. And when they now get the position, they use it for their own interest. And that's why at most times you see them not serving the people that voted for them. Because they will tell you, they will even tell you that, did you vote for us? We stage manage it to get into office. So, but it's not as bad as we are not progressing.
Okay.
We are progressing. The next line of action is how do we correct our error so that we'll have a perfect system.
Okay, I would also like to ask you a question.
Okay.
Because in evaluating a country's political system, usually political scientists will agree there are elements, there are factors, 4 of them. The participation of the people, involvement of the people, that is how inclusive the system has been, the role of the judiciary, and of course, fundamental human rights and rule of law. So this is maybe probably, before we just go into other areas. Professor Oyerinde, how much do you think Nigerians have been involved, in the political system within this outgoing year?
I would like to use the word Nigerians have been used than involved. When you talk of involvement, it means you are a stakeholder, you have to your take from that system. What the political elites have done is to just have a dichotomy between them and their followers. How did they do that? They will invite you, there will be election, and that's why the women forum, the women set of people in Nigeria, I always fight with them on this. The majority of people that vote happen to women. And if you have a woman candidate, they will not vote for the person. So what they usually do is they'll stage manage it, give you takeaway, sugar, rice, one bottle, Ankara, all those things. So when they give, you will now go and vote for them. Immediately they come in, they cut off. You cannot even access them again. As small as a councillor is, I remember there was a councillor that came in one area council here. And I asked him, you've come in, this is almost the third month. You are not doing anything. He said, I'm still in the court. When I finish court case, that's when I will come back. And I asked him, I said, but when you ask people to come and vote for you, you do not tell them that you have a court case and you will not serve them. And his predecessors, what they usually do is that when they amass the wealth, they'll start building, increase their number of wives, and a host of other games like that. So it becomes a personal gain at the expense of the populace. So the Nigerians, the followers, have to change we have to change our attitude.
Now that you've talked about change, so let's quickly go round now and see how we can address the gaps that we have, pinpointed. Again, the ball goes back to the political scientist, Dr. Abu.
All right, thank you so very much. You see, the entire concept of the state and society is built on justice. Without justice, there will be no order. And without order, there will be no stability. And without stability, there will be no life. And without life, there will be no economic activities. We're all testing all of this in Nigeria. I made mention of court of law rather than court of justice. If Nigerian courts are court of justice and they are democratized, we won't be having communal clashes, we won't be having religious clashes. Though conflict are inevitable, but the mechanism to really nip it in the bud from the very beginning is dialogue.
How do we democratize the judiciary?
Yes, if you go to okay, let me just take Botswana, for instance. I don't want to go to America. Botswana. In Botswana, it is the traditional institution that bring people together to settle dispute, while the state is concerned with order and governance. Now, because the traditional institution has a long memory, it is the historical deposit of all that has happened around that area. So, for instance, if a migrant, they know your history, they know those that were original to that very particular location. So, in Botswana, if you're talking about democracy, almost every area is involved in the governance of that very particular region. So, for instance, if I have a case with you, this is our traditional institution. In the morning, I go there and report the case, and they call him whenever it's available, and they dialogue. So it doesn't cost anything. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need interpreter. You don't need anybody. So this is something that would have escalated into family feud, into communal clashes, but because the system of governance is highly democratized, access to justice is democratized. Sometimes all that somebody requires is, I am sorry. And that ends it. But if you can't give that sorry, it's going to cost not only the two families, but the entire community a lot in terms of conflict and destruction. Now, if you take all the conflict across Nigeria, it's because one thing is lacking: the quality of dialogue, the quality of conversation. In fact, access to justice is the most expensive thing you can find in this country. So people are willing to take laws into their hands. So people don't trust the institutions of governance. Okay. So if what I've done in terms of analysis is to say that, look, we've made some gains, but another trend is emerging as a result of one challenge. And that challenge is the judgment by Supreme Court that said card reader is not recognized by the law. So if that is the case, as a politician, I will do everything humanly possible to win election, because there is a precedent that card reader is not known to law. And this card reader is the innovative device or technology that
can eliminate.
If you analyze all the elections in Nigeria, the devil is always at the level of accreditation and collation. So what Jega has done was to think around that issue. How do we solve this problem of accreditation and collation? And that is what the Supreme Court has dealt fatal blow. And so what we are beginning to see is reversal. So my take is, I think there is a need in the post-mortem, because like President Muhammadu Buhari has always maintained, he's a due process person. Yeah. And one bad thing with President Muhammadu Buhari is this: if you're a good person and he appoints you, you are going to deliver. Okay, but if you're a bad person and he appoints you, then you will take advantage of his trust in you.
Dr. Kengu, what might be the impact of that, Supreme Court ruling on the validity of the card reader, going forward?
I think what Dr. Abdul has done is to also try to give INEC some breathing space. INEC is an independent electoral commission and has the exclusive right of developing what you call electoral guidelines. Even against our Supreme Court judgment, INEC also said that they were going to use the card readers, and where card readers were not used, the elections were going to be considered not to have held. No court stopped that instruction, Doctor. So I think what is important is that when we also look at laws, let's also look at those who apply these laws. Yes, because it hadn't been signed into law. What is the role of the Supreme Court? Is to be able to look at the provisions of the law. So what they simply said is that this instrument, as innovative as it is, has not been captured, so cannot be seen as a basis of now concluding the elections. Okay? I think for me, INEC is the person that we should be putting on the spot. Because INEC says to you, we are ready, we have done X, we have done Y, we have done Z, we have done this, we have done that. 24 hours into an election, political parties have deployed agents, people are ready, and they wake up and say, oh, we are not ready for the elections. Now, at that level, they now get that exclusivity of now being able to cancel the elections at will. Remember, it happened in 2015, even with the card reader. Remember, it also happened in 2019. So there are 2 persons or 3 persons who must be able to blame here. One is the people, or the avenue of recruiting people into running for public office. That is very critical. Way back in those days, remember that they used to have SSS screening. Before a candidate could run for office, he was screened by the then SSS. True? What has happened today? You no longer have people being screened by SSS. 2, we do not have what you call a criminal database. Okay, because our law also stops some certain category of people from running for office. And because you don't have a functional criminal database, every person, I mean, I could kill, I could have murdered, I could have a murder case going somewhere, and I come and buy forms and then get immunity. Now, because we also do not have these investigative capacities to be able to first and foremost make certain that the wrong persons don't come into our political system. The moment it gets to that, winner takes all. Politics is a game of power. In my language, we call it in Dorondoro Chichi, struggle for power. That's what politics is. It's not a game for the lily-livered, okay? So, and in this process, this is why you must be able to now put this gap. I was listening to one conversation coming from a group in America today, and they were saying that 4 or 5 people were able to, manipulate about 2.6 million votes, in favor of the Democrats by just, having access, to the internet or having control of the internet.
The Republicans?
No, these were the Democrats now. Okay. They were actually saying that, and that these people had, capacity to be able to move as much as 15 million votes. We would always have politicians playing politics. It's all part of politics. Politics is part of politics. What the man wants is power. Now, but what it is we also have is to be able to build these systems that make it impossible for you to be able to get away with blue murder. This is where we're lacking. And this is where our justice system, like Abdul keeps saying, comes in. The moment you know that if you do crime, you're going to be doing time, what am I going to do? It's just to wait and be collecting the evidences. Now, you also now have the justice system being skewed to favor, especially those parties that are in power. And then they keep telling you smaller political parties. You see people clearly buying votes.
If we allow Dr. Ken,
it will continue.
We will end up talking all about politics.
The political sphere determines how a country is run. The economy has improved a bit, indeed, from the assessment of Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed. So, 2019 elections, a lot of money was in there. So how has it affected the economy of Nigeria in 2019?
Okay, if you're talking about the economy, please, you must permit us to take it a little bit out of Nigeria. Let's take it from, first and foremost, the global perspective, because there's a lot of influence. And then we'll talk about the socio-economic realities on ground. And then you can now talk about, what measures have been taken to be able to address it. So we can actually now see how this trajectory starts. Globally, three things defined or has defined global economy in the past 3-4 years. One, China-US relationship. Okay? Two, the Eurozone, and stifling of the economy of the Eurozone. Okay? And three, the fracking of the shale oil in America. Now, the moment America started producing their shale oil, and remember that oil is actually the blue-eyed boy, is the geezer lays the old air, and it is all about the volumes. The moment America stopped looking for oil and they started getting oil from their shale, the global economy started shaking, to the point that even the World Bank outlook for global growth now was reduced from, I think, 3.5% projected growth to about 2.1%. Remember that we are an intricate part of this global economy. From the Eurozone, we get a lot of aid. From America and China, we sell a lot of our oil. There was a lot of staggering. Okay? You now come home. We are an agricultural production state. A lot of our agricultural productions are done in the areas where you had insurgency running to close to a decade. Okay? So that also affected.
It's more than a decade now.
That's what I'm saying. So now, you must also now understand that because we are dependent, one, on agriculture to be able to create jobs, okay, engage people, and two, oil to be able to, actually now get foreign exchange. You now have what you now call this, you're dwindling. Some people now say, okay, we now got into, we're growing at 7%, and all of a sudden, it now froze to 1.6%. A lot of people thought it was, I said, no, you must be able to look at it from the source. Now, in going forward, I think for me, the biggest that has happened to us as a country is our ability to have gotten approval for the loans, the 22.8 billion. Okay, I think it was 30 billion and then 8 or something billion was approved. Because that money is not money that is supposed to. We don't qualify for it because we are no longer classified as being in the list of least developed countries of the world. Because a lot of those monies are coming at interest rates that are mind-boggling. Okay? Not to the negative, but to the positive. Now, what am I trying to say? For us, and a lot of Nigerians think that a lot of that money is going to go into infrastructure. No, it won't. A lot of it will go into systems. FIRS, EFCC, building our national data bank, which is the basis for developing infrastructure on a sustainable basis. So to that extent, now you now begin to talk about the measures our government has taken to be able to now make certain that we now have this steady growth that the minister was talking about. Okay? One, for the first time in a long time, a lot of people don't understand the production sharing, agreements that has been renegotiated. What it simply means that at every level of production now, we before now, it used to be from 50,000 barrels and above. That's only when you can earn profit. But right now, under 10,000 barrels, we are actually earning money. Okay? So we are beginning to now have a country that runs on what you call a system that now begins to now grow an economy. You look at the agriculture, side of it. The minister was open enough to say, we haven't done so well in that, area. But do you know what it is? Can we be able to now find how we can be able to now align our agriculture, okay, to the socio-economic realities of what you might be able to call your food security and your job security? Now, this is where, as an economy, we now begin to now look at what government has also done. I'm going to be closing because there are too many people here. There are 4 ministries. 2 are new ministries, and one of them gladdens my heart a lot, because for the first time in the history of this country, we now have a ministry that is dedicated to humanitarian IDPs, and social development. Now, for me, social development is all that you need. We had done fire brigade before, throwing money at people who is a poor person. But with social development, all you need to do is to be able to now tie the Ministry of Social Development to the Ministry of Science and Technology, to the Ministry of Agriculture, and now get what you can be able to call a National Development Rolling Plan, being driven by the National Planning Commission, and I can assure you the new decade, we are going to be up and running.
That's very good.
All right, let's bring in Professor Oyerinde. It's surprising. Yesterday, when the minister was ruling out the areas, of course, the sectors that have added value in our economy, Agric was not there, despite the huge investments. I mean, everywhere you go in the country now, it's agriculture. Almost everybody is turning to agriculture. At the back of your yard, you have a small garden. Yes. So what is happening? How would you evaluate that sector in 2019?
The economic diversification. This government believes in having competitive products that can access markets anywhere in the world. And as of today, even the contribution to GDP, Agri still has the highest contribution to GDP growth. So the minister not talking about it, let's leave that aside. Because what it means is that there is more to it. Because I know the budgetary provision for Ministry of Agriculture is huge. And I'm within the class of people that usually argue about the implementation and the use of those resources. I'm an actor in some of this agric program within the nation. But what I know, the feedback that I get from the farmer is poor. What most farmers are doing in Nigeria is an individual development. And that's why when a doctor talks about social development, the majority will still aggregate and have it that agri contributes 70% of employment in Nigeria. So if you have that and you are still neglecting that sector, it means we are calling for a chaos.
Are you insinuating that agri sector has been neglected?
It's been neglected.
Farmers never had it so good like they have in it now.
No, fortunately, I've been part of this agri development issue in the country. If I tell you the money that goes into our agency, that goes into our ministry, that we're supposed to use to assist the farmer. I was in the States sometime, I will not mention the States, to do one capacity building for them. Do you know that the input that they're supposed to use to cultivate came in August, September? When your input come in August, September, Nigeria is a raining season country where you don't have facility for irrigation in most of the villages.
Dry season farming.
So if your input, your seed, your fertilizer, your herbicide are coming in at the end of the season, what can you do? Unless you want to go and sell it. So those farmers started complaining that these are things that are supposed to be provided. And what they are now doing is to replant their harvested seed. And in agriculture, you don't do that. The productivity will be very low. So the sincerity among the actor that want to develop the farmer is not there. I was in Kanu last 2 weeks for one training as well. While going, my heart bleeds when I saw people drying their maize on the road, drying their pepper on the road, drying their rice on the road. And I asked a question at that program. It's an FAO program. I asked a question. I said, look, we claim that we are seeing stone in our rice, seeing stone in our pepper, seeing stone. Stone doesn't grow with crop. It means the government have not addressed the issue of producing infrastructure, producing technology that will assist the farmer. And that's my own bone of contention with them. The ministry, the actors, the agencies that are to assist the farmer need to provide, if not high-tech equipment, you can do intermediate equipment for them. That drying alone, if you have a flash dryer within the community, it's not expensive.
Yes, let's wait, because you're specific about value chain, improving the value chain, adding value. But Dr. Hamisu, I want to read out something from NBS. When the Anchor Borrowers program was initiated in 2009, so far, according to the NBS, over 1 million farmers are participating, 255 private groups, and 14 states are keen into this scheme in over 17 agri products. Would you then say that that's a sector that is not given due attention?
I think what Prof was trying to say, which he didn't bring out clearly, is the interplay between personal interest and public interest, where the actors that are charged with public responsibilities end up pursuing their own private interests at the detriment of the public they are supposed to work for. So, for instance, if there is a budgetary allocation, not that there is no budgetary allocation, and then the equipment is coming when the rains are almost going, then it means that somebody must have kept this money up to that very particular period for procurement to take place, either to earn interest on the said amount in the bank, or that the time was not ripe for them to do what they want to do. Because
but has government done what it...
No, government has done enough by providing funds.
Precisely.
But again, it's the application of the fund that is the problem. So I think what he did not bring out correctly is the issue of corruption in the system, that people, and what we call corruption in the system is the pursuit of private interest over because if you want to if you want to work in the private, you work in the private and you earn for yourself. If you want to work for public, you work for public and you are paid your salary. But when you are now pursuing your own private interest at the detriment of the public you are supposed to serve, then there is a problem, because the entire thing will be distorted, the deliverables will be distorted, even the quality will be distorted. And that is, let me come to Anchor Borrowers program. Sometimes early this year, around February, the Office of the Special Assistant to the President on Policy Development and Analysis did interrogate the change agenda with the aim of determining the challenges and the lessons learned. And one of the key things that came out of that very particular engagement was, one, diversification of the economy using agriculture. And Anchor Borrowers program featured tremendously. And when we at that very particular engagement, we looked at what Anchor Borrowers program has done in terms of the value chain deliverables, from the input, agricultural input, to the hectare of farm that's supposed to cultivate, the yield, in terms of safeguards, so that there will be no abuse. You now realize that, okay, Nigeria is beginning to think of how to solve some fundamental problems. So the Anchor Borrowers program is structured in such a way that farmers are not even allowed to go and procure input. The people that are giving input are registered based on the quality of input they are selling. So all they do is they cost it and they give money to this very particular organization. So, for instance, if you want to go into, say, agro-allied businesses now, you need to do the right things, because Anchor Borrowers program will not really... So, if we talk about keying into this program, we've seen how Anchor Borrowers program was able to save Nigeria ad and forex. Because what used to happen before is we sell petroleum, we import what? We import rice. And so the first thing they did, apart from those other value chain, is first to ensure that our forest is not filtered away. And as we usually say, if you are importing rice, it means you are creating jobs for those countries that are producing rice. For instance, Benin Republic, the population is around 9 million or so, but the rice they import is targeted at Nigeria, because the rice they import, they don't even consume it, but they import it and we go there to buy. So, and if you take the value chain and then the additional gains we've gotten from just rice paddy farming alone, from the farmer to the input providers to the milling. For instance, in Niger State, despite there has always been Cereal Research Institute there. The paddy rice is produced there, but you don't find 1 milling machine. But if you go to Niger State now, you have more than 10 million machines scattered in the villages.
Yes, and that's why just before we take our break, we'll hold you. Dr. Okengu, tell us what has happened quickly before we take our break now.
Well, I wanted to, I don't know how long I have, but I'm involved in a program with the Ministry of Agriculture now, and I can say this with a lot of authority. In probably the next 1 month, you're going to be seeing a plan that will revolutionize agriculture. Okay. You see, everything that Prof has said here, has to do with stopgaps, has to do with not creating the right linkages. You mentioned that these things come, but they come at a wrong time. Yeah. Now, this is why when we were celebrating our new budgetary cycle, a lot of people said, wow, now that you have it January to November, because they now start mopping up, you can actually now be able to now plan against your times and seasons. And for every program that you do, remember there's what they call a peer review mechanism. And we were having a chat, before we came, on board, and he was talking about that he had a bee farm. And I said to him, Prof, if your bee farm could produce 2 million liters of bee, how much would that be in dollars? He said it's not even only the bee farm that will give the money, that the thing that has so much values, the engineering component, the storage component, the processing component, the medicinal component, and you're talking about organic honey. So what are we talking about? You see, part of the problems we have in our country is the skewed nature of our MDAs and the lack of synergies, building relationships. In the first place, it will surprise you that a lot of the agencies that actually support agriculture with research are in Ministry of Science and Technology. Now, if you have a Ministry of Social Development, and you have a Ministry of National Planning, and you have a Ministry of Science and Technology, and you have a Ministry of Agriculture, and you don't have one program that ties them together, how are you going to now have social development? How are you going to be able to build social infrastructure? So, you see, I think what's happening is that we are moving towards this season, and that's why I say to people, what I see is a glass that is half full. I don't see a glass that is half empty. And we can keep interrogating, we can keep advising, government listens, and trust me, if you're a director, and we were talking about your program, let me say this publicly now, and he says in his apiculture program, 3 departments have budgets for apiculture. So who are you going to be interfacing with? But all you need to do is be able to now synergize those 3 departments, and he can be able to now interface with your people. So I think it's all about creating those right collaborations, partnership, linkages, and then we're good to go.
That's very good. We'll be taking a break now. When we return, we've been reviewing how the sectors fared in 2019. We have our tweets. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Yemi Adetunji, the COO downstream of NNPC. Ever since the closure of the borders, we have seen a marked reduction by 10% in terms of the evacuation of what you call loadouts of PMS, which equates to about 6 million liters per day, essentially because of the border closure, because of certain aspects we've also done as NNPC, working with our sister organizations, sister agencies, Nigerian Customs, DPR, Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, and other agencies, and also what we call Operation White, which is an intervention we have put in place to trace and track every molecule of petroleum products as they arrive in country through the vessels, as they move through the depots, and as they are evacuated with trucks out of the depots.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again. That is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me. I'm convinced. Change begins with me too. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
What we are really cultivating here is a better future for all Nigerian women, and it's not always easy. Panadol Extra relieves headache, backache, joint pain, toothache, and menstrual pain. The pain is worth it.
Welcome back. We have a number of tweets and we're going to take them now before we continue our discussion. We're beginning with Omogbola Babs. He tweets, federal government should constantly get in touch with the populace. There's a big disconnect between the federal government and the citizens on so many good things it's doing. Press freedom should be sustained, but fake news capable of causing conflagration must be censored. People welfare should matter.
Recurring violence between herdsmen and farmers, that's coming from Dele Jack Solomon, as well as related cattle theft and banditry in many northern states. Of course, he mentioned some of those states pose serious threats to peace and security of the nation of Nigeria and to Nigerians and their property in the year 2019.
And Mark Ayako tweets, let me reiterate my earlier contribution that NTA GMN is still the best of all morning programs of TV stations. Thank you for that commendation.
Omogbola Babs, in all of these negative comments on this thread, I saw a 2019 better than I experienced of 2018. It can only get better, slowly but steadily. The narrative is changing. Let us sustain the tempo. Permit me to commend the management of the NTA, particularly the progenitor of GMN. That's Good Morning Nigeria. The program has no doubt been able to mirror the different spheres of our national life. More can still be achieved better in 2020. God spare our lives.
And
Amen.
Usman Bani Kantu tweets, 2019 general elections was held. Litigations were entertained and resolved accordingly. Now, what is key is the cooperation of all to enable the government deliver on its mandate for the benefit of all. So, those hatching negative tendencies, evil plans, should desist from doing so.
And lastly now, Bamawu Osarume tweets, majority of the topics were very educative to me and my household. Hope 2020 will be more educative, and we pray that our president should give end power beneficiaries permanent jobs in 2020. We don't want to go back to the street doing nothing. I guess Bamawo is a beneficiary of the end power beneficiaries. I'm talking about end power. Well, that's the part of the social investment program scheme of the federal government. But let's still stay with Agric, because that's a sector that everyone, every developer, economic expert, wants to see drive our economy. Yeah. And recently we've been talking about the value that the closure of our land border or land border drills, have brought on the on farmers generally. Okay, let me take the ball down to Professor Oyerinde, okay. Yes, who himself is a farmer.
2019 is the best period for Nigerian farmer as regards the issue of closure of the border. Because for a while, the country has been turned to a dumping ground, where you have plastic rice coming in, where you have even rice that have expired coming in. And what amazed me is that this country have 91 hectares of land. And out of that 91 hectares, 81 hectares is arable. You can crop on it. No country of the world has such an opportunity. And when the border was closed, so many people criticized it. It's wrong for world trade, for this. Well, you can't be a dumping country, a dumping ground for expired good or for any other country to take you. The people are just taking advantage of our population. We are close to 200 million. That's why you see every country running to come and do business in Nigeria. because they know the market is there. So when the border was closed, that's now compensated for where we had problem as regards insecurity. Because because majority of where we have insecurity, the Northeast, is where you have volumes of agri products coming in.
Yeah.
Most of them cannot go to farm again. But because the border is now closed, what we now have is now conserved. And people that don't want to eat Nigerian rice are now eating it.
And enjoying it.
And it's even more nutritive than the foreign one. And most of other agri value chain are developing. I spoke about balanitis before we came in. That you call it kuka in the north. Balanitis, adua. They call it adua. Adua. The balanitis is an indigenous crop to Nigeria. In Uganda, they've made millions of naira from it. But now we are now going back there. How do we develop the value chain of the balanitis and a host of other indigenous products? So within that phase, we have increase. And that's why the slow growth that our GDP is having is termed slow growth, because when you compare it with about 5% in Ghana, around close to 10% in other countries in terms of growth, the ones that we have in Nigeria is around 2.3% GDP rate growth. So it's a slow growth. We are not retarding, but our growth with our capacity, with our resources, Nigeria should be able to feed West Africa in terms of the arable lands that we have. So, as of today, what we are doing, if we continue with this trajectory of making agri a business, agriculture is a business. If we turn it into a business, we'll end up taking over the market of West Africa, if not the market of Africa. And that is the only way that we can go back to what happened in the early 60s, where agriculture contributes majorly before we have the oil boom in around 1973 thereof, that we now neglected agri that we used to build the refineries. So if what we are doing now, if we continue by expanding the origin of the agricultural value chain, not of only rice.
What is it are we doing that you want us to continue? Is it the border closure?
The border closure,
we should continue.
We should continue that.
Nigerians want it to continue.
We should continue that. The reason I know the political angle. If we want to be the big brother that we've been doing in Africa,
yes,
we want to open the border. But if we open the border, it's at the detriment of Nigerian growth.
You know,
because I usually remember Dora Akuili.
Yes.
She is the advocate of eat what you produce. Eat Nigeria. If we are able to produce this cap in Nigeria, if we are able to grow the cotton that we use to make all these clothes in Nigeria, continually in the next 10 years, we'll compete favorably with most of the African
I was just going to say something. Yes. I was, in one of the local markets here in Abuja just a few days ago, and I was just hiding somewhere. I just saw a man, well-kitted man. He came to where they sell bags of rice, and he was actually demanding for local rice. Yes. And I was like, wow. He said, please, do you have local rice? So, so I had to ask the dealers, which brand? And they started, naming the different brands of local rice in the market. Yeah. So, Dr. Hamisu, I'm wondering, the value that the land closure has brought on the agri sector. We've also seen the agronomists coming up with new variety of cottons and all that. He is saying continue with the the border drills. We are told it's border drills, not closure. What's your perspective? What do you think? I know Dr. Kengo has his own.
This government has really come up with a lot of policies. And I must commend the government because it seems this government is a learning government. It followed the trail in terms of what is happening. First, we thought that, okay, by the time we incentivize agriculture and stop importation of rice, our problem is solved. But little did we know again that our neighbors around us are dumping this rice on us. So what do we need to do? You see, the border closure, I don't want us to look at it from closure of borders for just agricultural security and production. No, it goes beyond that. I think it is the refusal of our neighbors to do legal trading with us and respect our national priorities that led to the border closure.
And the free trade agreement.
Yes, and the free trade agreement is not a free trade agreement in dealing in illegalities and illegal businesses.
But how do you think that has also impacted on the security situation?
That is why I'm saying that it is not about agriculture alone. It's about a whole lot of issues. Now, if you take the Lake Chad region, the Lake Chad region is a border to all the areas that are experiencing one upheaval or the other, from terrorism to criminal gangs. And because these borders are connected, right from Turkey down to Yemen, come to Sudan, Libya, Chad. Niger, Chad, Cameroon. These are all gateway to Nigeria. Maiduguri is the bridge. So from Maiduguri through Kano, you are now targeting Port Harcourt. You are targeting Lagos. So the economy of Nigeria, as it were, is wired into the Sahel economy. So whatever happening, whether positively or negatively, is coming to Nigeria and is through mostly land borders. So from the smuggling of small arms and light weapons to drugs, because most of these criminal gangs, they trade in all of this because it provides them the means to sustain their struggle.
To migrants.
Yeah. So now if you take drugs, for instance, trafficking of human beings, guns. So just look at the way we're having these security challenges. Now, if you take that very particular region, that is where we have our nutrition from, as well as our food. The second place we have our food and nutrition again is North Central Nigeria. And these are areas that we're having serious conflict.
What has happened now, quickly?
So what has happened quickly is that with the closure of the land border, a lot of facts are beginning to add up. One, that the figures that has been bandied around as the consumption figure for our petroleum requirement is false. And that majority of them have been diverted. The second thing again, through the borders.
You know, in Maiduguri, during seasons like this,
yes,
trailer loads of, you see them just, you find out you don't have oil in Maiduguri, you don't have petrol in Maiduguri, but trailers and trailers just pass through and go to neighboring
So
countries.
Secondly, now the government is saying that, okay, you can sell petroleum, but not in border towns where you don't have population. These are policy responses to the realities on ground. So what that tells us is that Nigeria has been subsidizing other African countries, thinking we're subsidizing Nigeria. So you ask, where is the subsidy going into? The second thing again is the rate of banditry has reduced. Even the attacks in Maiduguri, in Yobe, they've reduced substantially, except that they want to make some statement and they come. And anytime they come, they are repelled. You know why? Because their capacity has been degraded. So access to weapons have been curtailed. So if you check North Central in terms of rustling and when last did you hear that? Now, in terms of agriculture, any nation that is not consuming what it is producing is doomed to remain perpetually a beggar. Because it is from producing to consumption that jobs are created. So if, for instance, the rice value chain we're talking about today, from the suppliers of the input to the farmers, to the millers, to the people that are even loading, the porters that are even loading, the drivers that are taking them across the country, the retailers, right? Now you could see the job that has been created. Now if you take this very particular school feeding program, just look at the school feeding program. From those that are supplying the food to those that are cooking the food, right? In the schools, you could see the value addition, rice, yam, and eggs. So you see, the issue is, the problem now, right away, as I say it is, Nigerian graduates are not able to take advantage of the policy environment to the extent that they're able to become self-reliant and able to employ people. What do I mean by that? Production of agricultural produce, that is given. The problem now is about packaging and processing and packaging. But our educational system has taught us to remain dependent on the bureaucracy. So every day we write, I beg to apply, I beg to apply. So we're not able, so for instance, Bank of Industry is saying, submit business proposal to us, say you want to establish poultry, or that you want to go into milling. We cannot write business proposal. We don't even have the capacity to do all of this. So if we are not technically inclined to the extent that we can go into processing and packaging where the money is, then we have a long way to go for it. Just one point. Yes. Cocoa is grown in Africa, but the value addition is in the West because they produce chocolate with it.
So, we talked about corruption as being a bane in the development of Nigeria, and the war against corruption and financial crimes in 2019 was sort of heightened. So how do you think, what areas do you need to be strengthened to make sure that money taken out of Nigeria is brought back?
I thought he would have allowed him to speak to these issues. I know he was...
We've talked about agriculture now. We're counting time.
You need to define corruption, because corruption is very ambiguous. If you're talking about money stolen,
yes,
it is the easiest thing you can be able to track.
Yes.
Money is the easiest you can be able to track. And because you now have the political will for people to track it.
Yes.
You now find out that, people are actually now doing time.
And we have a new ministry.
And yes, they are now facing justice. And I think it's going to even get better when the NFIU and the new special courts come into place.
Yes.
I see more and more and more of those who've dirtied their hands in public, funds, serving out, and facing justice and getting jailed. Now, but there's something that is important that we must talk about, and which is this land border closure.
Yes.
It is good to close your land borders, but it is very bad to shut out your neighbors. This is very important. When we became, at the time our currency were exchanging almost at the same rate, with the British pound and were higher, I think it was 70 kobo to $1 at one time. It was because we had the capacity to export. Now, what this border closure has actually shown us, and the professor and the doctor had clearly said it, the goods that were coming in from our neighbors were not coming in, they were not being produced in those countries. They don't even have the capacities to be able to do these productions. Now, we are almost half of the whole population of our zone. It's important that touch the Sahel, because if you don't understand what is happening in the Sahel, you might not understand why you close your land border. You will need to build a wall, because you have a minimum of 40 million people who are on forced migration from the Sahel, and they are heading to the savannah, the Guinea savannah, the Sahel savannah, and the mangrove forest. All of them are in Nigeria. There is nothing that can stop it. They are coming with close to 24 million livestock. Somebody talked about the farmer-herder clash. There is nothing that can stop it, except you now have a program to be able to know that you have a possibility of converting those 40 million people. Okay, Europe took, at one time, they had a visa policy that allowed immigrants to be able to come and work for them. Yeah. But they had programs that now absorb them.
Even Canada has it.
Okay, so if we have this workforce that is coming, and Professor was talking about 91 million hectares of land, out of which about 81 million is arable. He should have also talked about South Africa that has less than 13% of their land arable, and in the past 5-6 years, they have exceeded their annual production targets by 8 million tons of food. Why? Because they were able to now have a proper PPA. What is missing is the A in our P and P. What's the first P? Policy. What's the second P? Program. What's the A? Action. And this is where we can actually now absorb and then be able to, without shooting a gun, take over territory. See, people are forgetting that Benin has a seaport, and that Nigeria as a country can actually annex our seaport and begin to take it over. And we now have access to the sea from our northern zone. How do we do this? You don't do this by shutting them out. You do this by engaging them and making certain. Sometime, a very long time ago, I was involved in a project being promoted by the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs on some product in Niger Republic that I might want to make public here. And government was interested. How many people know that Nigerian government has mines iron ore mines in Guinea when we were doing Ajokuta. So it's important that in developing our foreign policy, let us not look at the gains. Yes, the immediate gains are that, yes, we are going to be able to get food sufficient, we are going to create jobs, we are going to do this, but you are not going to be, dependent solely. You must be able to get foreign exchange. You must be able to do foreign trade.
Dr. Kengo, just a word. Nigeria is not really shutting out her neighbors. As we said, it's not a complete closure. It's not a closure, so to speak. Closure. It's a drill. It's a drill that is permissive. I hope I'm correct. When you have challenges, you need to address.
Yes.
It's a partial.
You don't close, Claire. You don't close without a plan. My plan is that there's something that's come out of this closure. What has come out of it is that there are new markets that we have not explored that we can actually explore.
Sorry, we have to go. Doctor,
time has completely run out.
Go ahead.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Kengo, thank you. That's Dr. Emeka Okengo, development economist, of course, and a World Bank consultant. And a farmer. Yes, first and foremost, he is a farmer. I would like to thank you very much, sir, for joining us for this discussion. And Professor Oyerinde, Akim Oyerinde, Head of Department Crop Protection, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Abuja. Many thanks to you. I haven't seen my honey.
Very
and Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, researcher and public affairs analyst. Thank you very much.
I'm also a farmer.
And also a farmer.
Yes.
We are all farmers here. All right.
Are you also a farmer?
Yes. All right. Let's see what's happening on the foreign scene with Oyemi Ajayi.
A Sudanese court has sentenced 29 intelligence officers to death for the torture and killing of a 36-year-old teacher, Ahmad Al-Kir, who died in police custody in February. He was arrested for taking part in protests against then-President Omar al-Bashir's government. These are the first sentences handed down over the crackdown on pro-democracy activists in the months before Bashir was toppled in April, as it is believed that the sentences were just punishments, but the defense lawyer said he would appeal. After the sentencing, the judge asked Al-Kir's brother Sahad whether he wanted the 29 men to be pardoned, but he said he wanted them to be executed instead. The court found that Ahmad Al-Kir was beaten and tortured to death by the officers at the detention center in eastern state of Kassala. Now, elsewhere, scores of fires are burning out of control across Australia amid a heat wave that has seen temperature exceed 40 degrees centigrade in every state. The most dangerous fires were in the state of Victoria. About 30,000 residents and tourists were urged to flee East Gippsland, a popular holiday region, but evacuations were later deemed too risky as fires encroached on major roads.
Next is Sports Update.